Good evening, Unreal Engine and Blender users. So today we're going to do a tutorial on how to set up cloth simulation inside Unreal Engine 4 using Blender and Unreal Engine 4. Okay, now it's very important to recognize or to understand that this tutorial is for Unreal Engine 4. I'm currently using Unreal Engine 4 27.2. So this tutorial is using what's called Apex Cloth Physics, which was the cloth simulation system inside Unreal Engine 4. Now, inside Unreal Engine 5, Epic Games have changed the cloth system to their new updated Chaos cloth system. So this tutorial, while you may still be some things to learn from this tutorial, this tutorial doesn't really apply to Unreal Engine 5. This tutorial is specifically for Unreal Engine 4 and Apex Cloth Physics. Okay, cool. So let's get started. So what are we here to do today? We're here to show how to set up cloth on a character on a skeletal mesh to get it working inside Unreal Engine 4. Okay, so what I'm going to quickly do is I'm just going to show you an example of what the end result is, and then we're going to go over how to actually do that. Okay, so I'm just going to click play, and we'll see we have a character here, and this is just the third-person template inside Unreal Engine 4, and as you can see, we have some cloth physics, right? So her cloak is simulating when I move the character around. Now we've got a couple of little janky things going on here. Like, this isn't working perfectly, but we're going to go over how to solve these issues. Why you're getting that clipping there, or that sort of deformation there, and how you can fix that. But this is the end result. What we're going to try and do is what we're going to set up the cloth physics for a character. Okay. Now, in order to do that, we're going to start inside Blender. Okay. So what I want to explain first is that you can just set up. You can do cloth painting inside Unreal Engine 4, but that method is a bit finicky because the cloth brush painting tools inside Unreal Engine 4 are not very good, right? So what we're actually going to do today is, instead of setting up the cloth weighting inside Unreal Engine, we're going to set up our cloth weighting inside Blender, and then we're going to use the information we make in Blender to set up the cloth inside Unreal, right? Okay, so I'm just going to explain a few basics about cloth simulation, right, and what you need to do for your character. So here I have a character. This is a female player character model from my video game Mythrealm, right? Now, if I go into edit, now we can see that this character, now she does have a skeleton. She's a skeletal mesh, right? But we're not going to be paying any attention to skeletal meshes today. We're just going to be paying attention to we're not going to be paying attention to skeletons today. We're just going to be paying attention to the mesh, right? Now, I do, however, want to point out that in Unreal Engine 4, for cloth simulation, it has your object has to be a skeletal mesh. You can't do cloth simulation on static meshes, so you do have to make your mesh a skeletal mesh for cloth simulation to work. Okay, but we're not going to be working with the skeleton, so I'm just going to hide it, right? So this is a single mesh object. Now, inside this mesh object, you'll notice over here that we have 5 different materials, right? Now, that's not got anything to do with it's not got much to do with cloth simulation. That's just to do with this character. So we can see we've got hair material, we've got the face material, we've got the body material. Okay, we can ignore those. Okay, and then there's let's say the clothes material is like the base material. Now, and then the next one is the cloak material. Now, this is the material that we're going to use for cloth simulation. Now, in order for cloth simulation to work on your skeletal mesh, you do have to have a material that is specifically assigned to the geometry that is going to be cloth simulated. So in this case, we have a specific material that is assigned to the cloak, right? And this cloak is going to be what is cloth simulated. Okay, cool. So the way that we're going to achieve that is we're going to use something called vertex painting, or vertex color, right, to paint the cloth weights, or to assign the cloth weights onto the cloak, so we can then translate those weights into Unreal Engine. Okay, now I've already done that for this character, but I'm going to go through it from the beginning to show you how to do it. Okay, so inside edit mode, you go from edit mode and you go into vertex paint. Now we can see here that I've already vertex painted this cloak, and you can see I've got, like, at the bottom it is red, and then it's a very nice smooth gradient going up to the top where it gets darker, so that, you know, where the red is very red is very bright, you know, you'll get a lot of cloth simulation, and then the darker it gets, the more the cloth simulation decreases. Okay, now what I'm going to do now, there is this button up here called Vertex Selection Mask for Painting. This is really helpful. What this allows us to do is to only assign colors or paint on geometry that we have selected. So I'm just going to click this. Now, nothing's happened because I don't have anything selected, but if I select it and then go back in again, we can see that all these white dots show that we can now paint or color these vertices, right? In this case, we're only going to be coloring the cloak, so I'm just going to select the cloak. Okay, and now the very first thing, now as you can see, this is already painted, but what very first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to color the entire cloak black. Okay, so because we're going to start again from the beginning, so I'm just going to go down here and I'm going to use the command set vertex colors, Shift K. Now that shortcut might have changed in new Blender versions, but it will still be called set vertex colors. Okay, now I'm going to assign it all black. Right, so the whole mesh, all of the mesh has black vertex color, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into face select mode. I'm going to use circle select, and I'm just going to select some of the geometry down at the bottom. Okay, so I've got the bottom of the cloak. In this case, I'm going to get the next line along as well, like so, and I'm going to go back into vertex paint mode, and I'm going to assign pure red. Okay, so we're going to RGB 1 red. And once again, I'm just going to do set vertex colors. So now we've got a nice red. Okay, and then as I go up the cloak, I'm just going to we don't want to catch it. We don't want to catch her leg there. As I go up the cloak, whoops, a daisy. As I go up the cloak, we're going to use decreasing amounts of red. So now I'm going to set it down to 0.75, and I'm going to do Shift K to assign it. And I'm just going to go up to the next one, select it, and back into vertex paint mode, Shift K. Oh no, hold on. So now I want to decrease the amount of red again, down to 0.5. Oh, did I do 0.5? I did, that's great. I'm going to do Shift K. And then the next 3 lines, go like so. And this I'm going to do 0.25 red. Right, so we can see we've got a gradient going from pure red up to sort of less red, but we really want to smooth this gradient out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the whole cloak, and then we're going to go back into vertex paint. So we just had a little edit there because I ran into an issue with using the command called smooth vertex colors. So we just added a gradient of red up the cloak, but then what I wanted to do was use the smooth vertex colors command to kind of smooth the gradient. Now we can try that briefly, but you see it doesn't do very much. So what we really want is a really nice smooth gradient. So what I'm going to do instead of using the smooth vertex colors command, I'm going to use a brush, and I'm going to change the type to mix, and I'm going to make the color like mid red. Okay, actually, you know what? I'm going to go for full red, right? But I'm going to make the brush strength very low, so 0.02, and then I'm going to increase the brush size to 100, and I'm just going to like paint over a little bit. Oh no, hold on! I thought I changed to red. I hadn't. Okay, so and then I'm just going to paint over this a bit to kind of smooth out the gradient and sort of remove the kind of harsh contrast between the lines. Okay, so that should be good. Okay, cool. So the vertex painting is done. Well, mostly done. So there's one thing that we really want to do here, which is we want to make sure that the only part of the model that is cloth simulated is the part that is painted red, or even like very dark red. So what we actually want to do is we want to make sure that everything that we don't want to be cloth simulated is vertex painted black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into wireframe mode, and I'm going to deselect the polygons at the top of the cloak and go back into solid mode. Now I'm going to invert selection with Control I, and then we'll go back into vertex paint mode. So we've got everything selected that we don't want to be cloth simulated, and I'm just gonna so because we just want to make sure that everything that's not cloth simulated is black. Okay, so the final step is to do Shift K on the rest of the mesh. I just press Shift K, or you can go Paint, Set Vertex Colors, and that makes sure that the only parts that are painted red are the parts that we want cloth simulated. Okay, cool. So that is the cloth simulation done. Oh, sorry, not the cloth simulation. The vertex painting is done. So what we're gonna do now is we're going to export the character to Unreal. Now, I just want to clarify. You know, the materials themselves in Blender don't actually. What's in the materials in Blender really don't matter. These are just material elements, right? And you just want to make sure that the part that you want cloth simulated is assigned to the material that you want to use for cloth simulation in Unreal. We'll cover that a bit more when we get into Unreal Engine. Okay, cool. So let's export the character. So I'll select the character, and then I'll select the skeleton. We'll go File, Export, FBX. Now these settings are quite important. I'm going to check Selected Objects Only, and now one thing that's really important when exporting skeletal meshes from Blender is that you uncheck this checkbox called Add Leaf Bones, because it causes problems with the skeleton. So just make sure you uncheck Add Leaf Bones. I'm going to uncheck Bake Animation because we're not exporting any animation. And we'll just call this Alaris Cloth Tutorial 01. Okay, and it's in the right folder. So that's exported. And so now we're going to go into Unreal Engine, and we'll go into Unreal Engine. And I'm just going to make a new folder. I'll call it Cloth Tutorial Character. Okay. And then I'll import. And we want to go here. Okay, and we'll import this file. Now the import settings for FBX is we have a small issue here. It's not recognised it as a skeletal mesh. Now I know why that is. So don't worry, that's an inconsistency with my Blender file, and all that's to do with is that right now the character doesn't have an armature modifier. So I'm just going to add an armature modifier, and I'm going to choose the object root, and I'm going to assign the armature as a parent. Sorry, that was just a mistake that I made. So whenever you have a skeletal mesh, your mesh should have the skeleton, which is called root, as its parent, and also it should have an armature. It should have an armature modifier with the object roots. Okay, so let's try that again. Sorry about that. Okay, and we'll try it again. Import. And this time it's worked. So in this case, we're just going to be using the base third-person template. So I'm just going to choose UE4 mannequin skeleton. So my character is bound to the UE4 mannequin skeleton, so I just choose that. Now in this case, we don't want to create a physics asset. We want to use a physics asset that has already been created, that we already have in the project. Now, because this is a female character, we'll use the female physics asset. Okay. Now from Blender to Unreal, you want to do these settings: import normals and normal generation method built in. And I think we don't want to create new materials. Okay. Now there is this one thing here, vertex color import, right? So replace means, and it should be set to replace, import the static mesh using the vertex colors from the FBX file, which is what we want. So that's set correctly. Okay, so let's import the character. Cool. Don't worry about these. These small messages. These are just to do with a small incompatibility between Blender and Unreal. Okay, so here's our character. Right. Now you see that she's got no materials. Now fortunately, I created one earlier on, and we will go here, and we're just going to use the materials that we've already got. So we're going to get the clothes, and we'll slot them in there, and then we'll get the cloak. And now this is the material we're going to use for the cloth. And then we'll get, now hopefully, I think hair is the, no, that's the wrong one. That's hair, head, and then body. body goes in there. Okay, cool. So we've assigned our materials, and now we've got our character in Unreal, right? Okay, now I will just point out one thing. You may have noticed that the cloth, the mesh that was in Blender is a one-sided mesh. It doesn't have any depth, right? Now normally if you have a material, you may find that, like, when you look at because it's a one-sided piece of geometry, you may find that when you look at it from one side, it's like invisible from the other side, right? Which is how it was by default when I imported it. And I just want to show you how to fix that, right? So if you go into the material for your cloth, right? Now, I've already checked this earlier, but you'll see this checkbox called two-sided. Now, by default, materials are only one-sided, so this checkbox will be unchecked, right? So I'll just show you what happens when that checkbox is unchecked by default. You'll see that you can't see the cloak from the other side, right? Now, but obviously, generally, when you want cloth and it's a single sheet of geometry, you want your material to have this checkbox checked, which is called two-sided. So I just set that, and then we see that fixes it, so we can see the cloth from both sides. Okay, great. Right, cool. So now we have our character, and we have our materials. So the first thing that you do is you have to press this button up here called Section Selection, and make it active, and then you'll see you can click on section. So I could click on the hair, and you're selecting the different material elements, right? But in this case, we want to work with the cloak. So I'm going to click on the cloak, and then I'm going to right click and go create clothing data from section, and it's using the correct physics asset, which is the mannequin female physics, and so the physics asset would just be whatever physics asset you're using for your skeletal mesh. Okay, and I click create. So now we've created a cloth simulation asset. So with the cloak still selected, we click activate cloth paint, and we see there's the asset that we've created. Okay, and when we click on it, we can actually see, well, you can see it's all just red. Okay, but what we actually want, also it's all just pink, which means it has some weight to it. But what we actually want to do is we want to right click on masks and go copy from vertex color. Now, if obviously we've just in Blender, we've assigned vertex colors to the cloak in Blender. So now we're going to copy those vertex colors into the cloth weights. Right now, you want to change this. And you see it's color channel red, which is why I painted it red in Blender. And the scaling factor. Now, if you do one's going to be very small, so you want to kind of ramp that number up. In this case, I'm going to go with 40. And and what that really means is like how stiff is your cloth, right? So 1 is going to be very stiff, 40 is going to be a lot less stiff, something like 1,000 will be like very, very floaty. But in this case, let's go with 40. I'll click copy, and now you can see that what's happened is that where it's very red, we've got a nice white, and then it's going in a nice gradient, and that just makes the cloth deform better. Okay, so that's actually done, right? We've assigned the vertex color weights to the cloth weight, and we can close this now. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to right click here, and we're going to go apply clothing data, and you'll see that it started applying, right? So the cloth is now applied to this cloak. Now we have these little these little sort of deformation errors, and I'm going to show you how to fix those in a minute. And I'll show you why they're happening. But before we do that, let's just test our character in game. All right, so here's our skeletal mesh, our character, and now I've already got one ready here, but this was my previous example, so I'm just going to open up the third person character. Okay, so here we've got the third person character blueprint, and currently the skeletal mesh that's in the blueprint is the old one. So this was the one I created earlier, and now we're just going to swap that out for the one that we've just worked on, where we've adjusted the cloth and so on. And I'm just going to slot that in, and so now the blueprint is using the new character. They share the same skeleton, so that's why they're using exactly the same skeleton, so that's why I can interchange the old one with the new one, because this new one's using exactly the same skeleton, right? And so let's just check that that's working. Play, and let's see what the cloth simulation looks like. Okay, cool. So we can see that the cloth simulation is working. So the system has worked, and the cloth is simulating. But as we can see, as you can see, like we do still have these kind of these like weird deformations at the shoulders. Now what this is to do with is it's to do with the physics asset. What's happening is that there is an invisible physics asset associated with the mesh, and the physics asset is what is responsible for handling things like ragdolling or inverse kinematics, right? Now, so what the problem is that the physics asset is a bit too large, and so the cloak is colliding with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to fix the collision asset, right? Now to make it easier for us to visualize, what we're actually going to do is we're going to change the preview mesh, and we're going to change it to the one that we created, which is Alaris Cloth Tutorial. Okay. Now what you can see is that these arm cylinders are actually very large, and so what's happening is that they're kind of clipping through the cloak, right? And so what we want to do is we want to basically reduce the size of these. So I just press spacebar, and I'm going to make them a bit smaller, and then I'm also going to rotate them a little bit. Okay, and that should improve it. And I'm just going to do the same with this one. Okay, so can you see the cloak reacting to the physics asset as I change its size, right? So I'm just going to make that a bit smaller and rotate it a little bit. That looks about right. Okay, so now that we've changed that, let's have a look, see if that's improved it. Okay, so we can see it has kind of improved it. We've actually got a little bit too little. So you can see now that the cloak is clipping through her arm. So we actually want to make the collision object a little bit bigger. So I'm actually going to make them bigger. Okay, try that. See if that gets a better result. Oh no. Okay, so it's working okay, but we definitely. It's the left arm, so it's this one. Let's try that. Okay, that's right. So we've now solved that problem with the clipping in her arms. Maybe it's not perfect, right? But it's pretty good. Now, if you feel the cloak is too floaty, or it's like the cloth is too soft, you can reduce that. Okay. By going back to the skeletal mesh. Yeah, so if you want to reduce the cloth weighting on the cloak, like if you feel that the cloak is too soft or too floaty, you can go back to the skeletal mesh, open up the skeletal mesh again, with section selection enabled, click on the cloak, click on activate cloth paint, click on your clothing asset, right click on the mask again and go copy from vertex color. Now this time let's make it, so we previously did a value of 40, let's make the value like really high, right? Let's make it like 200. Okay, and we're going to make it even more floaty, right? Okay, or at least hopefully. So let's see if that works, right? And now you can see that the cloth is much more sort of soft and floaty, right? It's like the cloth is moving around much more. So if you want a sort of a more soft cloak, right, or soft cloth, right, then you can use a higher value. But let's say instead that actually you feel that it's too floaty and you want to reduce it, so you just go back, click on the cloak, activate cloth paint, select the clothing asset, right click on it, copy from vertex color, and let's do something smaller like 20. Let's say 20, right? Let's see how that works. Okay, let's apply it and save it, and now play again, and we can see that the cloth is moving much less. You know, it's almost a little bit too sort of rigid now, but we can see that is working, right? So if you want to edit the strength of your cloth paint, you can just go into the skeletal mesh asset, activate cloth paint, and then copy from vertex color and just play around with these numbers, right? So let's go back up. Let's go with 50, and then it overwrites it. We save it, and we can see it's gone back to being quite soft, but not overly soft. Cool. Okay, so that works. Good stuff. You can play around with those settings to try and get the right result. Okay, so that actually concludes the tutorial. We've gone from Blender, in which we've shown how to do the vertex paints. We've gone from Blender, in which we've shown how to do the vertex paints, and we've vertex painted the cloak in Blender, and then we've exported the character from Blender into Unreal Engine, and we've correctly imported it, applied its materials, and then we've created a clothing asset, and we've defined the vertex color weights on the clothing asset, and then we've applied it, and then we can see that we have a character in game that has a cloak with cloth simulation. Now you can use cloth simulation for all kinds of different assets, right? You don't have to just use them for, you don't have to use it just for characters. You can use it for things like flags and props and all kinds of stuff. But just remember that if you want to do cloth simulation with Apex Cloth or with cloth simulation in Unreal Engine 4, 427, the mesh does have to be a skeletal mesh. Okay. Alright, cool. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial on Unreal Engine and Apex Cloth Physics in Unreal Engine 427. If you like this video and you would like to support my channel, then you can like and subscribe. You can also wishlist my video game on Steam, which my game is called Mythrealm. I'll just quickly show you guys Mythrealm. So here's my game Mythrealm on Steam. It just released a couple of weeks ago, and there's lots of cloth simulation in this game. Cool. So if you like Mythrealm, check it out. But finally, thanks very much for watching this tutorial, and have a nice evening. Take care. Bye bye.